How Harvard students turn information into insight. You read books, they read people. You take notes, they extract patterns. You memorize information, they weaponize it. Same textbooks, same lectures, same internet, completely different results. Most people think Harvard students are just smarter. Higher IQ, better memory, born elite, wrong. Harvard doesn't produce geniuses, it produces interpreters. Students who can take raw, messy, chaotic information and turn it into insight. That's the difference. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at learning the same way again. Because right now, you're not learning, you're collecting. And collectors don't win. Interpreters do. Chapter 1. Information is cheap. Insight is rare. You live in the most information-rich era in human history. Unlimited courses, unlimited books, unlimited YouTube videos. So why are you still confused? Why do you read more, but understand less? Because you're playing the wrong game. Psychologist Herbert Simon said it best. A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. You thought more input equals more intelligence. Wrong. More input equals more noise. Average students consume information. Harvard students filter it. Here's what you do. You read a chapter, highlight half the page. Take notes like a machine. Feels productive. It's useless because you're treating all information as equal. It's not. Harvard students operate on a different rule. Not all information deserves to survive. They don't ask, what does this mean? They ask, what matters here? Massive difference. They hunt for signals, patterns, contradictions, leverage points. While you're busy copying slides, they're asking, what's the one idea in this lecture that changes everything? That's insight extraction. And here's the kicker. Research from cognitive science shows your brain can only deeply process a limited number of concepts at once. Working memory is tiny. You try to store everything. Your brain stores nothing. They compress. You expand, they win. But here's the problem, though. Even if you filter information, most of you still can't turn it into anything useful. Because filtering isn't enough. You need transformation. That's where Harvard students go nuclear. Chapter 2. They don't learn facts. They build mental models. Most people learn like this. Fact. Fact, 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 disconnected. Isolated. Fragile. You memorize definitions. You forget them next week. Classic. Harvard students don't collect facts. They build models. Let me explain. A fact is a single dot. A model is a network. When you learn supply and demand, average student memorizes the curve. Harvard student asks, where else does this apply? Dating markets, job markets, content algorithms. Now one concept becomes a universal lens. That's a mental model. Charlie Munger, billionaire investor, called this a latticework of models. And Harvard trains this aggressively because models scale, facts don't. Here's how they do it. Step 1, they connect everything. New idea? They immediately link it to something they already know. If they can't connect it, they don't trust it, because isolated knowledge is weak knowledge. Step 2, they translate. They take complex ideas and restate them in simple language. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. That's basically the Feynman technique. Harvard students do this constantly. Not for fun, for survival. Step 3, they generalize. They ask, where else does this show up? This turns knowledge into insight, because insight is just pattern recognition across domains. You see the same structure in different places. That's when your brain levels up. But here's the problem, though. Even if you build models, most of you still fail, because your brain lies to you. You think you understand? You don't. Welcome to the illusion. Chapter 3. They destroy the illusion of understanding. You read something twice, feels familiar, so you think you know it? Wrong. That's called the illusion of competence. Researchers in the book Make It Stick proved this. Recognition is not understanding. Just because it feels easy doesn't mean it's learned. Harvard students know this. So they attack their own knowledge. They don't review, they interrogate. Instead of rereading notes, they do this. Close the book. Ask, explain it out loud. No notes, no safety net. If they struggle, good. That's where learning happens. Psychologist Robert Bjork calls this desirable difficulty. The harder it feels, the stronger it sticks. You avoid struggle, they seek it. You reread, they retrieve. You highlight, they test. That's why they progress faster. Because retrieval strengthens memory pathways. Every time you struggle to recall, your brain says, this matters. Lock it in. But they go further. They don't just retrieve, they stress test. They argue with the material. What's wrong with this theory? When does this fail? What assumptions are hidden? This creates depth. Because insight lives at the edges, not in the middle. Average students accept information. Harvard students challenge it. That's how insight is born. But here's the thing, though. Even if you understand deeply, you'll still forget everything. Unless you solve the biggest problem of all. Memory decay. Chapter 4. They engineer memory like a system. Your brain is not built to remember everything. It deletes aggressively. Ebbinghaus discovered this in the forgetting curve. You forget most of what you learn within days. Brutal. So what do? Cram harder? Wrong. Harvard students don't fight forgetting. They schedule it. Spaced repetition. Reviewing information at the exact moment before you forget it. That's the sweet spot. Too early? Waste of time. Too late? Start over. Perfect timing? Permanent memory. Medical students use tools like Anki for this. Harvard students apply the same principle mentally. They revisit ideas strategically, not randomly. But here's what makes them different. They don't just repeat information, they evolve it. Every time they revisit a concept, they ask, what did I miss last time? What's deeper here? This turns memory into layered understanding. Like upgrading software. Version 1, version 2, version 3. You reread the same note. They extract new insight each time. That's exponential learning. But wait, it gets worse. Because even if you remember everything, you might still be useless. Why? Because knowledge without application is dead weight. Chapter 5. They convert insight into decisions. This is where Harvard students separate from everyone. They don't learn for exams. They learn for judgment. Every piece of knowledge gets translated into, what does this change about how I act? If nothing changes, it's not insight. It's trivia. You read about psychology? Cool. They use it to negotiate better. You learn economics? Nice. They use it to spot opportunities. You study history? Interesting. They use it to predict behavior. That's the difference. Application. They constantly run simulations in their head. If this is true, then what? This builds decision-making speed. And in the real world, speed matters, because opportunities don't wait. Here's what they do daily. They journal decisions. Not feelings, decisions, what they chose, why they chose it, what happened after. This creates feedback loops. And feedback creates insight. Over time, they build something insane. Judgment. The ability to see through noise and act correctly. That's what you're actually trying to learn. Not information, judgment. But here's the problem, though. Even if you do all of this, most people still fail, because they never change their identity. Chapter 6. They don't see themselves as students. They see themselves as thinkers. This is subtle, but it changes everything. Students consume knowledge. Thinkers manipulate it. Students wait for instructions. Thinkers create frameworks. Students ask, what's the answer? Thinkers ask, what's the pattern? Harvard students are trained to think, not memorize. That's why case-based learning exists. You're not given answers. You're forced to interpret, to decide, to defend your reasoning. And that rewires your brain. You stop chasing correctness. You start chasing clarity. You stop fearing mistakes. You start using them. Because every wrong answer reveals a gap. And gaps are where learning happens. Most people avoid looking stupid. Harvard students weaponize it. They speak up, get challenged, get corrected, faster feedback, faster growth. You stay silent, slow, safe, stagnant. Hit subscribe before you forget this, because this is where most people drop off. They understand the system. They don't apply it, and nothing changes. But here's the final problem, though. You now know how Harvard students turn information into insight. But if you're still consuming garbage information, what's the point? Fast processing of bad input is still bad output. That's why I made the next video, breaking down exactly how elite learners identify the 20% of information that actually matters and ignore everything else. Because once you combine that with everything you just learned, you won't just learn faster. You'll think differently, and that's when it becomes unfair.